This is an NBC News special report. Here's Joe Fryer.
Good morning. We're coming on the air with breaking news on the war with Iran. NBC News has learned from 2 U.S. officials that a search and rescue effort is underway after an American fighter jet went down inside Iran's territory earlier today. It's not clear how or why that jet went down. Comes as an Iranian news agency also reported about that jet and that an American pilot might still be alive. Let's go to our senior White House correspondent, Gabe Gutierrez. Gabe, what are we learning?
Yes, Joe, a lot of this is a fast-moving situation, and as you just reported, 2 U.S. officials do confirm that two-seater F-15 went down over Iran earlier today. It is unclear what the fate of that crew is so far, but there is an active search and rescue effort underway, according to those U.S. officials. We're still awaiting any confirmation, though, from the White House. It's unclear right now, with the president having no public events on his schedule. We're waiting to hear whether, in fact, he has been briefed on the ongoing situation. But this comes just 2 days, Joe, after the president gave a primetime address to the American people, making his case for the ongoing operation inside Iran, saying that the U.S. would continue airstrikes for the next 2 to 3 weeks, but that the military goals in Iran were nearing completion. Of course, up until this point, U.S. officials had said that there had been 13 casualties among U.S. service members. Again, still a lot of questions about this particular incident, but we do understand that an F-15 has come down over Iran. Unclear exactly what the fate of the crew is at this point, but we're awaiting any more information from the president or the White House at this point, Joe.
Gabe, we are still waiting to hear more from the White House specifically about this, but the president has been talking a lot over the last several hours about what is happening in Iran, the U.S. military's efforts there. What is it we have heard from the president?
Certainly. Well, just earlier today, and this comes, again, as I mentioned, this speech that he gave, this primetime address, a rare primetime address for the president, he suggested that U.S. operations may be winding down after a brief period of escalation. But just this morning, the president suggesting that if the U.S. were to have more time, that U.S. officials could go in and take the oil from the Strait of Hormuz, and therefore opening up, raising questions about how long the U.S. does plan to continue this military campaign inside Iran. However, the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, as well as President Trump, have repeatedly said that Iran's missile capabilities have been degraded significantly, that their missile attacks have been down more than 90% since the war began. Still, though, this does suggest, this downing of this F-15 fighter jet does suggest that Iran still does have potentially significant capabilities, although, again, we're still waiting to hear what the exact circumstances of this downing of this F-15 fighter jet are. But, again, Joe, the president this morning raising the possibility that it won't be such a quick withdrawal from the Middle East, from Iran, as he suggested just 2 days ago.
All right, Gabe, we'll ask you to continue to stand by there at the White House. Let's go to our international correspondent, Raf Sanchez, who is in Doha, Qatar. Raf, we have been hearing a lot of reporting from Iran state media throughout the morning here. Wanted to wait till we got more official word from those U.S. officials before coming on the air with this new information. But what have we been hearing out of Iran today?
So, Joe, we have been hearing from authorities in Iran that this American warplane went down in an area of the south of the country. This is a mountainous region. It is a tribal region. A lot of the population there are made up of nomadic tribes, and are made up of nomadic tribes. And authorities in those provinces are saying that they are putting out a reward for anyone who is able to capture this aircrew. They do not seem to know at this point whether these pilots are alive or not, but they are saying it is a priority for them to be taken into custody in Iran. They are offering a reward the equivalent of $60,000, and they are saying capturing them alive is the priority. Now, Joe, if it is confirmed that this aircraft was was indeed shot down. That would be the first confirmed downing of an American aircraft by hostile fire during this war. You will remember about 3 weeks ago, a refueling plane collided with another aircraft over Iraq. It crashed. 6 service members were killed there. And then in the early days of the war, 3 F-15s were shot down over Kuwait. That was a friendly fire incident. Those were American aircraft shot down by the Kuwaiti Air Force. Iranian state media does seem to be reporting that some kind of rescue operation is underway. We are seeing videos out of southern Iran of what appear to be American helicopters flying low over the valleys in this mountainous region. But again, authorities in Iran are urging people in that area to try to find and capture this American aircrew, and they are offering a reward for anyone who's able to do so.
All right, Raph, we'll ask you to continue to stand by there. We do want to go back to Gabe Gutierrez at the White House with some more reporting about the president and him being briefed on this. Gabe, what do you know?
Yeah, that's right. According to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just a few moments ago, according to her, the president has been briefed on this incident. Again, we're awaiting any official comment from either him or Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth or CENTCOM that might shed some more light on what just unfolded here. But again, Joe, as I was reporting earlier, this does raise questions about the president's plan in the upcoming days and weeks for this war. He has been threatening an escalation, even yesterday saying that the U.S. has not even begun to attack what's left of Iran. Certainly the Defense Department had been saying that the U.S. has struck some 12,000 targets since the war began. A U.S. official telling NBC News that the military checklist for the war was nearing completion, but certainly the president suggesting that an escalation could happen over the coming days and weeks, about 2 to 3 more weeks. But again, the breaking news right now, the president of the United States has been briefed on this incident, and we're awaiting any official comment from him, Jeff.
All right, let's bring in NBC's Stephanie Gosk, who joins us now from on the ground in Tel Aviv. Steph, over the last few weeks, anytime we get an update from the Department of Defense, they talk about how much Iran's abilities to fire, to use drones, have been degraded substantially over time. So what do we know about Iran's capability of still firing, first at targets above in the sky and also at other targets throughout the Middle East?
Yeah, Joe, so the U.S. officials say that basically Iranian's military is decimated. Iranian officials say that's not the case. The only thing we know for sure, Joe, is what they're able to do with their military. And we've seen in the last 24 hours examples of what they're still capable of. Now, we don't know if this F-15 was actually shot down or not, but if it was, then that suggests they've got air defense systems that are still working. From our perspective here in Israel in the last 24 hours, we've certainly seen rocket attacks coming. I just came from a site that was impacted last night, and we saw some images of it. At least a large part of a rocket, or the entire rocket itself, hit a warehouse just outside of Tel Aviv, fairly close to the airport. We went out there. It's a warehouse that's owned by a company called Aerosol, which is an aerospace manufacturer, according to its website, and they make drones. Now, that certainly would seem to be a target that the Iranians would want to hit directly. We also have targets being hit in the Gulf today. You had a Kuwaiti oil refinery, as well as a desalination plant that was also targeted. So clearly there's still some ballistics ability that they have, and they are still hitting targets, Joe.
And Steph, that's sort of a sign of how things have sort of shifted in recent days, is this focus on the infrastructure that is in Iran when we talk about power plants, refineries, desalination plants, the bridge that the president was talking about on social media today, but also some of the energy infrastructure in other countries around Iran, correct?
Yeah, there is this kind of exchange back and forth between hitting infrastructure. The president putting up that video on Truth Social yesterday of the bridge in flames, smoke rising, saying that more will be hit. He's also said that power plants will be hit if there is no agreement that is reached. And then, yeah, you have a desalination plant in the Gulf is one of the most critical pieces of infrastructure for that part of the world, because that's how people get their fresh water. A desalination plant takes the salty water from the sea, takes the salt out, and then it becomes water that people can drink, Joe.
All right, Raf, let's bring you back in here. I know there have been these visuals emerging from Iran. We've had experts looking at those visuals to get a better idea of what happened with this fighter jet in Iran. What is it we're learning from those experts?
Yeah, Joe, so we ran some of these pictures past an expert. You may just be able to see on that bit of wreckage there is the corner of a design. And one of the experts we ran that picture past says that design indicates that this F-15 was based at an American air base in the United Kingdom. It's called RAF Lakenheath. And we do know that warplanes from that base were moved from the UK to the Middle East to take part in this operation against Iran. So again, we do not have any official confirmation from the Pentagon, from the U.S. military, but this expert who's knowledgeable is saying that that marking would be consistent with those of squadrons based at RAF Lakenheath. We've been saying, Joe, that this is a two-seater F-15. So normally what you have in that configuration is one pilot and one weapons operator. These are versatile aircraft. They can be used to strike against the ground. And as we've been seeing over and over again in this conflict, refueling aircraft are playing a big, big role, keeping these smaller fighter jets in the skies over Iran. You can imagine, Joe, just from the emphasis that Iranian authorities are putting on finding this air crew, that they would consider it an enormous coup if they were able to capture alive the two air crew from this F-15. From the Iranian perspective, those pilots would be a significant source of leverage in any future negotiations with the United States. You'll remember that the Islamic Republic back in 1979 began with a hostage crisis, holding American diplomats from the U.S. Embassy in Tehran hostage, using them in negotiations with the Carter administration before they were eventually released on the very first day of Ronald Reagan's presidency. And so as the Iranian regime eyes potential negotiations with the Trump administration on how to end this war, it would be a major, major bargaining chip for them if they did have two American pilots in their custody. And that explains, Joe, why they are offering this reward, the equivalent of some $60,000 to people in this tribal area if they are able to find these pilots. And again, they say capturing them alive is the priority. Joe.
Raf, I want to recap this breaking news this morning. Two U.S. officials telling us a two-seater F-15 went down over Iran Friday and that a U.S. military search and rescue effort is underway. That's what we know, Raf. I'm going to ask you a question that might be better for our Pentagon reporters, but perhaps you know the answer. Clearly, U.S. Central Command has to be prepared for every single possible scenario, including this possibility right here. Do we have an idea of how CENTCOM has prepared for a search and rescue operation like this within the borders of Iran? I have to imagine that would involve perhaps using helicopters, which can be more of a target if Iran is firing at U.S. military aircraft.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. We don't know the details of the contingency planning CENTCOM would have done for this specific scenario over Iran, but you can guarantee any time that the U.S. military is sending fighter aircraft over hostile territory, there will have been planning for what happens if that aircraft goes down, whether it's shot down or whether it suffers some kind of technical malfunction. And at this point, we just don't know for sure in this case. But the basic playbook is this. First of all, the military will want to establish total air superiority over the region where that downed plane is thought to be. So you will have a lot of fighter aircraft in the sky, making sure that no Iranian jets or helicopters can interfere. You're then going to want a lot of aircraft for ground support. So these are planes, fighter jets, helicopters, to make sure that Iranian ground forces moving towards that area are not able to reach that crash site. Again, this is a fairly mountainous region of southern Iran. This would not necessarily be an easy operation for Iranian ground troops to make their way to the crash site, let alone for them to do it while under fire from the air. You're seeing on your screen right now what appears to be a refueling aircraft refueling two American helicopters over southern Iran. The final layer of any search and rescue operation, once you've established superiority in the air, once you've put assets in the air to make sure that Iranian ground troops can't reach the area, is to have boots on the ground, usually dropped from helicopters, to go and to recover those pilots. That obviously is the dangerous part, the incredibly dangerous part, where some American helicopter would need to land on the ground. Most likely special forces would have to climb out of that helicopter, and they would aim to recover that air crew, get them back in the helicopter, get back airborne, and then make their way safely out of Iran again. At this point, Joe, we just do not know, either from the U.S. side or from reports coming out of Iran, the fate of that air crew. It does seem clear that a large-scale search and rescue operation is underway. We do not know whether the U.S. has a detailed sense of where exactly that air crew might be, but it is very clear right now that both the United States military and the Iranians are looking for them.
Jeff, a video we showed a moment ago, a C-130 tanker, 2 helicopters flying over southern Iran. Let's go back to Gabe Gutierrez, who's at the White House, where the president is being briefed on the situation right now. Gabe, so many people are asking the question of what could be the off-ramp here. That depends on the negotiations with Iran. Where do those stand right now?
Well, at this point, there are a lot of questions about where those stands. Of course, there have been messages traded between the U.S. and Iran through Pakistani intermediaries. Earlier this week, the president told the New York Post that the U.S. had been in direct talks, actually, with the parliamentary speaker inside Iran, although there have been a lot of questions about the frequency of those messages and what Iran has actually agreed to. There are many unanswered questions about any potential off-ramp here. Just earlier this week, the president said that it didn't matter if the Iranians came to the negotiating table or not, because the U.S. had already decimated so much of Iran's capabilities. Now, certainly, this breaking news raises questions about the potential for escalation in the next coming days. We should point out, Joe, the U.S. officials have not confirmed exactly how that fighter jet came down, so we're still waiting for any more information on that and awaiting any further comment from the president or the defense secretary. But again, for those just tuning in, the press secretary here at the White House saying that the president has been briefed at this point. The president suggesting earlier today that the U.S. could somehow get more involved in taking back or reopening the Strait of Hormuz, Joe.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez and our entire team, thank you so much for your reporting. That concludes this NBC News special report. We'll have more ahead on our streaming network, NBC News Now, online at NBCNews.com. A full wrap-up tonight on NBC Nightly News. I'm Joe Fryer. Thank you for watching.